I wanted to do a special announcement for my sponsor of The Warrior Within. I am incredibly thankful that I have the sponsor that I have had for this season on The Warrior Within. My sponsor's name is Diane Call, and she's an incredible singer-songwriter, friend, and supporter of the arts. I really appreciate that she is my sponsor, but not only that, she is my friend. I really appreciate and respect her, and she's an incredible sponsor, and her sponsorship has meant so much to me and the Warrior Within. I am so grateful and thankful that she took a chance on me and made the Warrior Within even better. I appreciate her guidance and I respect her so much. And like I said, she's a singer-songwriter. She has an album out now called Happy Fish and Other Delights. It contains songs about death, rebirth, and transformation. The album pays tribute to the smallest of warriors, a little goldfish with one fin called Happy Fish, who had inspired Diane to start writing songs again. So please be sure to check out her music page on Facebook, Diane Call Music, www.facebook.com/DianeCall17. You can also subscribe to her YouTube channel and stay up to date on the latest music video releases, including the one for her first single, Cowboy Church. Hello and welcome to another episode of The Warrior Within. I'm your host, Jaime Bennett. Viewer and listener discretion is advised. I'm going to be talking about the Salvation Army. It is that time of the year where you see them out ringing the bell, collecting money for families in need. So I want to dive into the history of the Salvation Army. I want to talk more about how it came to be and its origins. So I'm going to be getting this from the internet. So of course it is mostly in quotations. The first website that I'm going to is Britannica.com/topics/salvation-army. And it was by the editors of the Encyclopedia Britannica article history. So let's dive into the Salvation Army and its origins. The Salvation Army is an international Christian religious and charitable movement organized and operated on a military pattern. In the early 21st century, the Salvation Army was at work in more than 130 countries and other political entities, where it preached the gospel and operated thousands of evangelical centers, social welfare institutions, hospitals, schools, and as well as other agencies. Its international headquarters are in London, of course. The Salvation Army was founded by someone by the name of William Booth, a Methodist minister who began an evangelical ministry in the East End of London in the year of 1865. He established mission stations to feed and house the poor, and in 1878 changed the name of his organization to the Salvation Army. He and his son, William Bramwell Booth, gradually established the army on a military pattern, with the elder Booth as general for life. It spread quickly over Britain, and then it expanded internationally. Two schisms shook the army in its early years. In 1884, the U.S. organization sought to establish its independence of General Booth. Upon being expelled, its leaders set up the American Salvation Army, which soon declined in the year 1896. Bollington Booth, another son of the general and national commander in the United States, resigned after a dispute and set up the Volunteers of America. The Volunteers endured, and it is a national organization with headquarters in New York City. The basic unit of the Army is the Corps, commanded by an officer of rank ranging from lieutenant to brigadier, who is responsible to a divisional headquarters. Divisions are grouped into territories. Usually a territory is a country, except in the United States, where there are 4 territories. Converts who desire to become soldiers in the Army are required to sign articles of war and volunteer their services. The officers are the equivalent of ministers of other Protestant churches. Training for each officer consists of 2-year residence at one of the schools, followed by a 5-year plan of advanced studies. Women have absolute equality with men. Absolute equality with men. That's really nice to see that in writing. It's really nice to hear that. I hate to say it, and I don't want to get into any political arguments. I'm not here for that. But it is nice to, see that on the internet, and it's nice to hear that because a lot of times women don't get treated equal as men, and that really needs to change. But, there are instances where men aren't treated equal with women, so it just needs to change. Gender equality needs to change. The doctrines of the Army include the basic principles common to the most Protestant evangelical denominations. William Booth believed that the sacraments were not necessary to the salvation of the soul. He sought to bring into the worship service an informal atmosphere that would put new converts at their ease. Joyous singing, instrumental music, clapping of hands, personal testimony, free prayer, and an open invitation to repentance characterize the services. So here is more about William Booth. He was a British minister, and he was born April 10th of 1829 in Nottingham, Nottinghamshire, England. He died August 20th of 1912 in London. Founder and general between 1878 and 1912 of the Salvation Army. The son of a speculative, I can't pronounce that. Pardon me, it's like some people trying to say spaghetti. I mean, no disrespect. The son of a speculative builder, Booth was apprenticed as a boy to a pawnbroker. At 15, he underwent the experience of religious conversion and became a revivalist preacher. In 1849, he went to London, where he worked in a pawnbroker's shop at Walworth, hating the business, but bound to it by its necessity of sending money home. Sometimes you sacrifice your happiness for the well-being of your family. I have been there. I have done that. I always said I did not want to work for the restaurant industry. Not to be mean, I'm not saying that if you work for the restaurant industry that it's terrible, that it's a bad job to have. There's no shame in raising money for your family. There's no shame in making money for your family. Sometimes you have to do things that you do not like doing in order to make money for your family. And being an assistant manager of a restaurant was one of the things that I did that I absolutely hated, but I did it for the sake of my family. At this period, he met Catherine Mumford, his future wife and lifelong helpmate. In 1852, he had become a regular preacher of the Methodist New Connection, and in 1855, they were both married. After 9 years of ministry, Booth broke loose from the New Connection and began his career as an independent revivalist. Booth held the simple belief that eternal punishment was the fate of the unconverted, coupled with what was a profound pity for the outcast and the hatred of dirt, squalor, and suffering. In 1864, Booth had went to London and had continued his services in tents as well as in the open air and founded at Whitechapel the Christian Mission, which became in 1878 the Salvation Army. Booth modeled its orders and regulation on those of the British Army. Its early campaigns excited violent opposition. A skeleton army was organized to break up the meetings, and for many years, Booth's followers were subjected to fines and imprisonment as breakers of the peace. After 1889, these disorders were little heard of. The operations of the army were extended in 1880 to the United States, in 1881 to Australia, and later to the European continent of India, to Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, and elsewhere. General Booth himself being being a traveler. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that word. We'll save your ears. Being a world traveler, organizer, and speaker. In 1890, General Booth published In Darkest England and The Way Out, in which he had the assistance of William Thomas Stead. He proposed to remedy pauperism and vice by means of homes for the homeless, training centers to prepare immigrants for overseas colonies, rescue homes for fallen women, homes for released prisoners, legal aid for the poor, and practical help for the alcoholics. There was a vast public support for the program. Money was liberally subscribed, and a large part of the scheme was carried out. The opposition and ridicule with which Booth's work was for many years received gave way, toward the end of the 19th century, to a very widespread sympathy, as it results were more fully realized. The active encouragement of King Edward, at whose insistence in 1902 he was invited officially to be present at the coronation ceremony, marked the completeness of the change. And when 1905 hit, General Booth went through England, and he was received in the state by mayors and corporations of many towns. The fiery old man had become a great figure in English life. Evangeline Corey Booth, original name Eva Corey Booth, born December 25th of 1865 in London, England, and died July 17th, 1950 in Hartsdale, New York, United States. Anglo-American Salvation Army leader whose dynamic administration expanded that organization's services and funding, who became its fourth general. Born in South Hackney section of London, Eva Booth was the daughter of William Booth, and soon afterward, founder of the Salvation Army. She was educated at home and grew up doing the work of the Salvation Army, assuming a position of responsibility in the Marylebone district of London by the age of 17. Isn't that incredible? Now for both her musical talent and her striking personal appearance. She soon received the by-name White Angel of the Slums. In 1889, at the age of 23, she was given charge of the Salvation Army's International Training College in Clapton and put in command of all Salvation Army forces in the home countries, London and the surrounding area. She became the Salvation Army principal troubleshooter, as well as in 1896, when her older brother, Bollington Booth, and his wife, Maud, threatened to break away from rule. Eva effectively took over command of the shaken organization. That's incredible. I never knew that. That's so incredible. And it was on her arrival in the United States that she adopted the name Evangeline. As more dignified, she then proceeded to Toronto, where she took command of the Salvation Army in Canada. And in 1904, Booth became commander of the Salvation Army in the United States. And in that post, her administrative skills flourished. New forms of the social service were instituted, including hospitals for unwed mothers, a chain of Evangeline residents for working women, homes for the aged, and during World War I, canteens featuring donuts for doughboys. Her services to the war effort won her a Distinguished Service Medal in 1919. Under her personal supervision, the Salvation Army quickly developed disaster relief services following the San Francisco earthquake and the fire of 1906. She abandoned the organization's tradition of street begging and set up instead an efficient system of fundraising. Booth was successful in enlisting the open support of a great many distinguished and wealthy public figures. In the first national drive in 1919 raised $16 million. And that was in the year of 1919. That is incredible. The rapid growth of the Salvation Army and the proliferation of its services and facilities necessitated the establishment of 4 regional commands, but she remained in clear control from her New York headquarters. Booth's only political involvement was to throw the weight of the Salvation Army behind the movement for prohibition and against the later movement for repeal. Her popularity was such that in 1922, the general of the Salvation Army, her eldest brother, Bramwell Booth, abandoned the policy of rotation and allowed her to remain in charge of the United States. And in 1923, she became a naturalized citizen. And by 1934, she became the 4th general of the Salvation Army and the last member of the Booth family to hold world command. She retired 5 years later. Among her published works are The War Romance of the Salvation Army, 1919, with Grace Livingston Hill, Songs of Evangel, 1927, a collection of hymns she composed toward a better world in 1928, and Women, 1930. Isn't that incredible? That is so incredible that she was able to do all that, and she accomplished a lot of it when she was in her 20s. That's incredible. Catherine Booth, Catherine Mumford, born January 17, 1829, Ashbourne, Derbyshire, England, and died October 4th, 1890, Clacton, Essex, wife of founder of the Salvation Army, William Booth, and herself an equivalent preacher and social worker. Her father was a carriage builder and sometime Methodist lay preacher. Her mother, a deeply religious woman of Puritan type. Catherine, in adolescence, an invalid, was educated principally at home and early acquired some competence in the theology of her day. The family moved to London in 1844, and she became an active member of the Wesleyan Methodist Church in Brixton. When this church expelled a group of reformers, she and her future husband joined them. They were married in 1855, and Catherine became her husband's devoted helper. Catherine Booth was a convinced believer in women's rights to preach the gospel, and her pamphlet Female Ministry of 1859 is still contingent. She herself began to preach in her husband's church at Gateshead in 1860. She became a notable orator, and in 1880 through 1884 conducted highly successful meetings in various halls in the West End of London. In 1885, she took part in a campaign and secured the passing of the Criminal Law Amendment Act designed to protect young girls. She did not believe that sacraments are essential to salvation. Although the evolution of sacramental attitude of the Salvation Army must not be wholly attributed to Catherine Booth, her beliefs were undoubtedly influential. So, William Bramwell Booth. British minister. William Bramwell Booth, born March 8, 1856, Halifax, Yorkshire, England, and died June 16, 1929, London. Second General of the Salvation Army through 1912 to 1929, and the eldest son of William and Catherine Booth. He became an active full-time collaborator in 1874, and from 1880 was the Army's chief organizer. He carried into practice the social services plans outlined by his father in 1885, together with William Thomas Stead. He stood trial at the Old Bailey on a technical charge, connected with the successful attempt to secure legislation protecting young girls that were in moral danger. But he was acquitted. The trial and Stead's vigorous press campaign proved to be a skeptical public that in 19th century England girls could be bought and sold for immoral purposes, not only with their consent but against their will. An able speaker and a tireless exponent of the doctrine of Christian perfection, he published 9 books, of which Echoes and Memories, 1925, and these 50 years, 1929, are perhaps the best known. William Bramwell Booth was also an enthusiast for religious work among young people. He became general on his father's death. Maud Bollington Booth, American religious leader. Maud was born, and her maiden name was Maud Elizabeth Charlesworth. Born September 13th, 1865, in Limpsfield, Surrey, England, and she died August 26, 1948, in Great Neck, New York, U.S. Salvation Army leader and co-founder of the Volunteers of America. Maud Charlesworth grew up from the age of 3 in London. The examples of her father, a clergyman, and her mother, who worked with her husband in her slum parish. I guess I should say her married name was Maud Elizabeth Charlesworth. I take that back. She was the example of her father, a clergyman, and her mother, who worked with her husband in the slum parish, predisposed Maud to social services, and in 1882 she joined the Salvation Army. Organizing work in France and Switzerland was followed by pioneering social service work in London slums. In 1886 she married Bollington Booth, son of General William Booth. Okay, I take that back. So her maiden name is that. See, I'm finding out stuff the same time that you all are. And adopted both his names. In 1887, they took the command of the Salvation Army forces in the United States, and their successful efforts to establish the American branch on a firm basis and earn recognition for its work. She was particularly adept at winning the support of persons of position and influence. At the same time, she had remained personally active in the slum mission work in New York City. The Bollington Booths became naturalized citizens in May of 1895, and by the year of 1896, a disagreement with William Booth over administrative policy led Maud and Bollington Booth to resign from the Salvation Army and to establish the rival Volunteers of America, which became a lasting religious and charitable organization. Maud Booth later became absorbed in prison reform, working for rehabilitation of prisoners and contributing to the development of the parole system. She also published a number of books on mission and prison work and others for children. Following the death of her husband in 1940, she was elected General of the Volunteers of America, a post she held for the remainder of her life. So, that is very, very interesting. So you all learned like the origins of the Salvation Army. I never knew all that. It's interesting to learn all about all this stuff as I am doing the show for you all, because, I'm finding out things about it, and it's interesting and fascinating. So the Salvation Army does have a mission statement, and their mission statement is as follows. As soon as this loads, the Salvation Army's mission statement. The Salvation Army exists to share the love of Jesus Christ, meet human needs, and be a transforming influence in the communities of the world. Their vision statement: we are an innovative partner mobilized to share hope wherever there is hardship, building communities that are just and know the love of Jesus. All this is in quotations. Harbor Light's mission. Harbor Light exists to restore hope and promote recovery. This is in Vancouver, Canada, because I told you all that, they did have branches in Canada. Downtown Eastside. The core values are compassion, respect, excellence, integrity, relevance, cooperation, celebration. Hope, service, dignity, and stewardship. In the United States Air Force, we had a lot of the same values. And so, the whole military, it being based on the military, reform makes sense. And, I respect what they try to do. I respect that they try to help families. I just nothing but respect for the Salvation Army. It's a good thing that they try to do, because there are a lot of families that are in need out there, and it's nice that there's an organization that can bring hope, that can possibly help. There are movies, quite a few movies, that either mention the Salvation Army or are based on the Salvation Army. So I'm going to tell you a list of movies, because I thought that you all might think that it's interesting. And if you want to check them out, there you go. Some Christmas movies, maybe you can watch them during this time of the year, because the Salvation Army... when you think of Christmas, or when I think of Christmas, I always think about the Salvation Army being out there with their bucket, ringing their bell. So one of them is called The Belle of New York, The Blue Bonnet, Fires of Faith, The Salvation Army on the Job, and Salvation Rose. If you want to check some of those movies out, that might be a good movie list for you to start with. And yeah, so that's the history of the Salvation Army. I learned a lot. It's incredible. I hope that you all enjoyed this episode, and I hope it was informational and educational. Stay tuned, because there are going to be 2 more episodes of The Warrior Within after this episode. Because this is the season finale, the final 3 episodes of the season, and I can't honestly tell you when The Warrior Within will return. It'll be sometime in 2023. But you can always check out some of my older episodes if you've enjoyed this episode. I have had many, many topics, and I have enjoyed doing this show so much. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned for the next episode, and love, hugs, and blessings. On this episode's special cause is Toys for Tots. The Toys for Tots message of hope for the future has motivated youngsters to grow into responsible, productive, patriotic citizens. Toys for Tots not only benefits children, but also has a positive impact on communities, on businesses, large and small, on the Marine Corps, and on the nation. So you can donate to Toys for Tots, or find out ways to donate to help out by going to toysfortots.org/donate. Again, toysfortots.org/donate. Please make a very appreciated donation today.